Today we're going to talk about Unit 3, Target 3, and we're going to talk about evaluating functions. So what I would like you to do is I'd like you to find when x is 3. And I bet you some of you are like, okay, well, I'm assuming she's talking about taking x and putting it a 3 right there, or putting a 3 over here, or putting a 3 in for x right there. But how do you know which equation I'm talking about? And you don't. That's my point, is that just saying find when x is 3, you don't know where you should put 3. And so that is the point of function notation. So function notation looks like this. Now I want you to find when x is 3, but I give you this, f of 3. That's how you read that. And so now what I've done is instead of having y equals y equals y equals in all of these equations, notice the first one says f of x. The second one says g of x, and the third one says h of x. So what that means is we're labeling each of the functions instead of just saying y. So it's a way for us to deal with a lot of equations at one time that we're arbitrarily going to name them F, G, H, I, J, K. It could be any of the letters of the alphabet. But now this is going to read F of 3. And what I want you to understand that means plug in 3. But now the F is telling you exactly what function to use when you're looking at a list of functions. So f of x is the exact same thing as y. It's just called function notation, which allows us to work with a lot of more functions at one time and not get so confused. So here we go. Notice I have 3 functions, f of x, g of x, and h of x. And I have these things here. So this is saying in this first spot, g of 8. That means take x equals 8 and plug that in to the g function. Okay, so if I were to do that, exactly where I see an x and g, right here, I would put 8. So I'm going to write 8 minus 9. And what is 8 minus 9? -1. So my answer to the first one is when I plug in 8, my y value is -1. So f of -2 is very similar, is that I'm going to take -2 and put it right here where I see an x. So I'm going to do 4 times -2 minus 1. So what is 4 times -2? That's -8 minus 1. That gives you -9. Okay, so that's my answer to the second one. Now the third one says, hey, h of -3. So that means I'm going to take -3, but notice h has a square. There's 2 places where there's an x. So I have to plug in this number in twice. Okay, and anytime you square a number on a calculator, you need to put parentheses around it or it's going to be wrong. So -3 squared plus 3 times -3 minus 4. So -3 squared is +9 plus 3 times -3 is -9, and then minus 4. If I add all of that together, I get -4. That's my answer. Okay, so this is just plugging in a bunch of numbers, which is why we call it evaluating. The only new part is instead of y, you have these letters, G, F, and H. Okay, so this is slightly different. Now let's talk about what would happen if I worked backwards. So notice the biggest difference is where we have the number. Okay, if I put f of 14 and I put it on the inside, that is giving you an x value, which means plug in 14. But this time, the 14 is on the outside. So what that means is I'm giving you a y value of 14, not an x value. And so what you have to do is you have to set it equal to 14. So instead, I'm telling you f of x is equal to 14. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here and put a 14 right here. And I got to do working backwards. So 14 is equal to 4x minus 1. I'm going to add 1 and say 15 is equal to 4x. So x is equal to 15 over 4. So when I give you the number on the outside, I'm giving you the y value. You have to put it in for y. Very similarly, over here, I see g of x equals -5. That means I got to put a -5 for where g of x is, not so that's our y value. So I'm going to do -5 equals x minus 9. So if I want to get x, I'm going to add 9, and 9 minus 5 is 4, so x is 4. So again, you have to pay attention to where the number is. Is it inside or outside? If it's inside, you're just plugging that number in. That's what x is. If it's on the outside, I'm giving you the y value, and you have to find the x value. Okay, a few more things. We could also make you evaluate tables. Notice sometimes the number's on the inside, sometimes the number's on the outside. So this is telling you what column to look at. F of 0, that's on the inside, that's giving you an x. So you need to look in the x column. I found the 0 right here. So what is my answer? When x is 0, I'm going to get 3. Similarly, f of 4, 4 is right here. What's my answer? I'm going to get 0. Okay, but these bottom two ones are different. Okay, what happens down here is notice the numbers on the outside. So this time I need to look in the f of x column, which is my y column. So where do I find 3? Well, that's right here. And so my answer is actually when x is equal to 0. Okay, and then where do I find 1? 1's right here. So what is my x when I'm 0? X is equal to -1. Okay, so you got to pay attention. Where is the number, inside or outside? What side of the table should I be looking at? Then we also could ask you to evaluate using a graph. So same thing. Notice I have g of 1. That's an inside value. G of 3. That's an inside value. But here I'm asking you g of -5. So these are asking you for the y values. When g is 1, meaning when x is 1, what's y? So I found x is 1. Where is my graph? Right here. What y value is that at? That's at -2. G of 3 is go over to your graph, find where it's at 3, and that's right here. What y value is that at? That's at 0. Okay, now this one is working backwards. This one is saying g of x is equal to -5, meaning the y is equal to -5. So if I go over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line straight across because my y values are -5. So I'm looking for what x's that would happen at. Notice it crosses right here, and then that's when x is -2. But it also crosses right here at +2. So I actually have two answers. X is at 2 and -2. You have to write down all of the answers. Oops, sorry. You have to write down all of the answers that it crosses at. Okay, and so I have two answers, 2 and -2, right here and right here. Okay, good luck. That's everything you need to know. Your homework tonight is going to be a worksheet or Math Excel. You choose which one you want to do.